Have you ever met someone who seems compassionate, caring, deeply empathetic, but only with certain people? They'll move mountains for a stranger, cry at a movie, rescue a wounded animal, but when it comes to you, when it comes to people close to them, there's this strange coldness, this calculated distance, this tactical withdrawal of feeling, and it confuses you because you've seen their capacity for empathy. You know it exists. You've witnessed it with your own eyes. So why, when you're hurting, when you need support, when you're reaching out, do they suddenly become ice? Why do they choose who deserves their compassion and who doesn't? Arthur Schopenhauer understood this phenomenon better than almost anyone, and what he discovered will disturb you. Today, I'm going to reveal something about human nature that most people deny, refuse to see, or are too uncomfortable to admit. We're going to explore the dark art of weaponized compassion, the people who wield it like a currency, and why Schopenhauer believed that empathy itself can be one of the most manipulative forces in human relationships. Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is the basis of morality." But he also understood that compassion can be withheld, strategically deployed, used as a tool of control. That some people have mastered the art of appearing empathetic while being profoundly, calculatingly cold. In the next several minutes, we're going to dismantle the myth of universal empathy. We'll explore why some people choose deliberate unavailability, how they use rationed kindness to maintain power, and what it reveals about the darkest aspects of human psychology. This isn't about becoming cold yourself. It's about recognizing when someone's empathy is a performance and their distance is a weapon. This is uncomfortable territory. Schopenhauer never sugarcoated human nature. He showed us the will behind our actions, the selfishness disguised as virtue, the calculations hidden beneath seemingly noble behavior. And if you're ready to see people as they truly are, not as they pretend to be, then stay with me. Because what you're about to understand will change how you perceive every relationship in your life. If you're someone who values brutal honesty over comfortable lies, who wants to understand the hidden mechanics of human behavior, then subscribe now. This community is for those who choose clarity over delusion, truth over performance. Let's dive into the shadows together. The first truth: rationed empathy is a power move. Here's what Schopenhauer understood that most people miss. Empathy is not neutral. It's not this pure universal force that flows equally to everyone. It's selective. It's calculated. And in the hands of certain people, it becomes one of the most effective tools of manipulation and control. When someone shows you empathy, they're not just feeling your pain. They're making a choice, a deliberate calculation about whether your suffering is worth their emotional investment. And when they withhold that compassion, when they go cold precisely when you need warmth, that's not an accident. That's a strategy. Schopenhauer wrote extensively about the will, that blind, insatiable force that drives all human behavior. He believed that beneath every action, every gesture, every show of compassion, there's a deeper motivation, a hidden agenda, a calculation about how this serves the self. And weaponized empathy reveals this perfectly. Think about someone in your life who fits this pattern. They're incredibly empathetic with strangers. They volunteer. They donate. They cry at commercials about abandoned dogs. Everyone thinks they're the most compassionate person alive. But with you, with their partner, their family, their closest relationships, there's this strange frost, this emotional unavailability, this refusal to engage with your pain. Why? Because empathy with strangers is safe. It's performative. It costs nothing because there's no real intimacy, no vulnerability, no threat to their carefully constructed image. They can be compassionate from a distance, receive praise for their goodness, and never actually have to deal with the messy reality of genuine emotional connection. But empathy with you, real empathy, that would require something they're not willing to give. Vulnerability, reciprocity, the risk of being truly seen. So they withhold it, strategically, calculatingly. They construct barriers precisely when warmth would create connection, because connection threatens their control. Schopenhauer would say this is the will protecting itself. By maintaining emotional distance from those closest to them, they stay in control. They never have to confront their own capacity for genuine feeling, their own fear of intimacy, their own carefully guarded vulnerabilities. And here's the manipulation. Because they've demonstrated empathy elsewhere, you can't accuse them of being cold. Everyone else thinks they're wonderful. So when you don't receive that same compassion, you start to believe the problem is you. You're not worthy. You're too demanding. You're asking for too much. But that's the trap. That's exactly what they want you to believe. Because as long as you're questioning yourself, you're not questioning them. As long as you think you're the problem, they maintain their position of power. Their tactical withdrawal has achieved its purpose, keeping you destabilized while they remain untouchable. The second truth, the frozen learn empathy is a liability. Now we go deeper, because the question becomes, why? Why would someone choose emotional distance over connection? Why would they deliberately withhold compassion when they clearly possess the capacity for it? Schopenhauer had an answer, and it's darker than you might think. He wrote, "We can regard our life as a uselessly disturbing episode in the blissful repose of nothingness." He believed that life is suffering. That existence itself is an endless cycle of desire, frustration, temporary satisfaction, and renewed desire. And that the more you care, the more you feel, the more you open yourself to empathy, the more you suffer. So some people, the calculatingly distant ones, have made a decision. They've decided that empathy is too expensive, that caring deeply is a vulnerability they can't afford, that opening their heart creates wounds they're not willing to endure. They've learned, often through brutal experience, that compassion is a liability. Maybe they were empathetic once. Maybe they cared deeply, loved fully, opened themselves completely, and they were destroyed, betrayed, abandoned, used. And in that destruction, they made a choice. Never again. But here's the problem. They still need to appear empathetic, because society rewards compassion. People trust those who seem caring. Opportunities open for those perceived as kind. So they can't abandon empathy entirely. They just make it selective, calibrated, controlled. They show empathy where it benefits them, withdraw it where it threatens them, and calibrate it perfectly to maintain their image while protecting their carefully guarded core. Schopenhauer would say they've recognized the fundamental truth about existence. Caring leads to suffering. So they've created a system where they appear to care without actually risking genuine emotional investment. They've found a way to receive the social benefits of empathy without paying the emotional cost. And with you, with people close to them, they can't maintain that performance. Real relationships require real empathy, sustained, vulnerable, risky empathy, the kind that might actually hurt them. So they go cold, they withdraw, they create distance, not because they don't see your pain, but because they've decided your pain is not worth their suffering. It's brutal, it's selfish, but from their perspective, it's survival. They've looked into the abyss of human suffering that Schopenhauer described, and they've decided the only way to survive is to care strategically, never fully, and certainly never where it might actually cost them something. The third truth, Calculated distance is a test of your worth. Here's where it gets even more disturbing. Because for some people, rationed compassion isn't just about self-protection. It's about evaluation. It's about determining whether you're worth their emotional investment. Schopenhauer understood hierarchy. He knew that people assign different values to different individuals, that we don't treat everyone equally, despite what we claim to believe. He wrote, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." And some people have inverted this. They withhold 3/4 of their empathy to maintain superiority over others. They withhold empathy as a test. They go cold, emotionally unavailable, deliberately distant, and they watch how you respond. Do you chase them? Do you beg for their compassion? Do you degrade yourself trying to earn what they give freely to others? If you do, you've failed the test. You've revealed yourself as someone of low value in their hierarchy, someone who can be controlled through the withdrawal and granting of empathy, someone who needs them more than they need you. And once you've failed that test, their frost intensifies, because now they know. They know you'll accept crumbs. They know you'll stay even when you're emotionally starving. They know they have power over you, but if you don't chase, if you accept their distance with indifference, if you turn that same calculated unavailability back on them, something shifts. Suddenly you become interesting. Suddenly you might be worth their empathy, because you've demonstrated that you don't need it, which paradoxically makes them more willing to give it. This is the sick game Schopenhauer would recognize immediately. The will competing with itself. Two people engaging in a power struggle disguised as a relationship, each trying to care less, each using empathy as a bargaining chip, each testing the other's desperation. And the emotionally distant ones, the tactically compassionate ones, they're masters of this game. They've learned that empathy given freely has no value, but empathy withheld, strategically deployed, carefully rationed, that has immense power. So they withhold it from you not because you don't deserve it, but because they're determining whether you'll accept this dynamic, whether you'll participate in this hierarchy where they decide when and if you deserve compassion. It's manipulation at its finest. Emotional control disguised as personality. Deliberate coldness presented as just how they are. But Schopenhauer would say it's something else entirely. It's the will to power expressed through the weaponization of compassion itself. The fourth truth: emotional barriers protect a fragile ego. Now we arrive at a paradox, because you'd think that people who strategically withhold empathy, who choose calculated distance, who carefully calibrate their compassion, you'd think they'd be strong, confident, secure in themselves. But Schopenhauer would say the opposite is true. The coldest people are often the most fragile. Their tactical unavailability isn't strength, it's armor. It's protection for an ego so delicate, so vulnerable to being truly seen, that they can't risk genuine emotional connection. Schopenhauer wrote, "Every parting gives a foretaste of death, every reunion a hint of the resurrection." And for some, the fear of that death, that vulnerability inherent in true connection, is so overwhelming that they choose permanent distance over temporary loss. Think about it. Real empathy requires something terrifying: the ability to feel another person's pain without making it about yourself, to witness suffering without immediately trying to fix it, explain it, or distance yourself from it, to sit with discomfort that isn't yours. And for someone with a fragile ego, this is impossible. Because if they truly empathize with you, if they genuinely feel your pain, it might reflect something they don't want to see in themselves. It might remind them of their own unhealed wounds. It might crack the carefully constructed image they've built of being strong, independent, above the messy emotional reality of being human. So they go cold. They withdraw empathy precisely when you need it most. Not because they're strong enough to withstand your pain, but because they're too weak to confront what your pain might reveal about them. Schopenhauer wrote about the ego's desperate attempts to protect itself from suffering. And one of the most effective protections is deliberate unavailability. By refusing to genuinely empathize, by keeping everyone at arm's length emotionally, they never have to confront their own capacity for pain, their own vulnerabilities, their own deep-seated fear of not being enough. Their rationed compassion creates a buffer. They can appear empathetic enough to maintain their self-image and social standing, but never risk the genuine vulnerability that real empathy demands. And here's the tragedy. The people who most desperately withhold empathy are often the ones who most desperately need it themselves. But they've convinced themselves that needing is weakness, that vulnerability is failure, that showing genuine emotion is defeat. So they project this onto you. When you need their empathy, they see weakness. When you express pain, they see failure. When you reach out for connection, they see someone confirming everything they're terrified of being themselves. And their coldness isn't about you at all. It's about them. It's about their desperate attempt to prove to themselves that they're different, that they're above emotion, that they don't need what you need. But Schopenhauer would say, this is the ultimate delusion, because the will drives everyone. Suffering touches everyone, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you strong. It makes you isolated, disconnected, and profoundly alone. The fifth truth: true strength is empathy without agenda. We've descended deep into the shadows of human nature. We've seen how empathy can be weaponized, how distance can be tactical, how compassion itself can become a tool of manipulation and control. But Schopenhauer also showed us something else, a way out, a different path. He wrote, "Compassion is the basis of morality, not calculated compassion, not rationed empathy, not carefully calibrated displays of caring designed to maintain social status or control others. Real compassion, the kind that flows naturally, without calculation, without agenda, without expectation of return. And this is where we find the distinction between those who choose deliberate unavailability and those who possess genuine strength. The tactically distant measure every display of empathy. They calculate its cost, they evaluate its benefit, they withhold or grant it based on what serves them. And they call this strength. But Schopenhauer would say, this is the opposite of strength. It's fear masquerading as power, it's fragility disguised as control. It's the desperate attempt of a frightened ego to protect itself from the very thing that makes us human, the capacity to truly feel. Real strength is empathy without agenda. It's the ability to witness suffering without making it about you, to offer compassion without needing something in return, to stay warm even when coldness would be easier, safer, more protective. This doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean allowing yourself to be manipulated by those who strategically withhold empathy to control you. It doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for people who will never reciprocate. It means recognizing the difference between genuine empathy and calculated performance, between real compassion and manipulative distance, between someone who struggles with vulnerability and someone who weaponizes it. The emotionally distant have taught themselves that caring less equals winning more, that calculated barriers equal power, that withholding empathy gives them control. But what have they actually won? Control over people who will eventually leave, power in relationships that will never be real, a life of carefully managed distance that protects them from hurt, but also from genuine connection, real intimacy, true understanding. Schopenhauer wrote, The two enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom. And those who choose tactical coldness escape pain only to embrace boredom. They live in a carefully controlled emotional desert, safe from storms, but also from rain, from growth, from life itself. The final truth: you cannot change them, only see them clearly. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you handle people who practice calculated distance, who wield rationed compassion like a weapon, who've mastered the art of appearing empathetic while remaining fundamentally unavailable? Schopenhauer would give you uncomfortable advice. You cannot change them. Their coldness isn't a mistake. It's not something you can fix with more love, better communication, patient understanding. It's a choice, a strategy, a way of being they've developed because, from their perspective, it works. And trying to earn the empathy they strategically withhold is participating in their game. It's accepting the premise that their compassion must be earned, that you must prove your worth, that their emotional availability is a prize to be won rather than a basic element of genuine relationship. But here's what you can do. See them clearly. Stop making excuses for their frost. Stop believing that if you were just better, more worthy, less needy, they'd finally show you the empathy they show others. Stop accepting the narrative that you're the problem. Their weaponized compassion reveals everything you need to know. It shows you that they're capable of empathy, but choose when and where to deploy it. It demonstrates that their coldness toward you is deliberate, not accidental. It proves that their emotional unavailability serves a purpose in their internal hierarchy of what and who matters. Schopenhauer believed in facing reality without delusion. And the reality is this: some people have chosen distance as their strategy for navigating life's suffering. They've decided that calculated barriers serve them better than genuine connection. You cannot love them into warmth. You cannot prove yourself worthy of their empathy. You cannot change someone who's made tactical unavailability their identity. You can only decide whether you're willing to accept it or not. We've explored the darkest corners of human empathy, or the lack thereof. We've seen how some people turn compassion itself into currency, how they use rationed kindness to maintain control, how their coldness is strategy disguised as personality. Schopenhauer showed us that beneath all human behavior lies the will, that blind force driving us toward our own interests. And weaponized empathy is the will at its most insidious, appearing virtuous while being profoundly selfish, seeming compassionate while being calculatingly cold. You deserve empathy that doesn't need to be earned. You deserve compassion that flows naturally, not strategically. You deserve warmth from people who choose connection over control. And if this resonates with you, if you've recognized this pattern in your own life, share your experience in the comments. Have you encountered someone who practices tactical compassion? How did you respond? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. This community is for those who choose to see reality clearly, who refuse to accept calculated distance as love. The people who withhold empathy strategically have chosen their path. Now you choose yours.